In this lesson, we're going to take a look at 3 famous riffs that are going to be fun to play and help you level up your playing as a beginner guitarist. Now, in the previous couple of lessons, we looked at single string riffs, so if it's your first go at playing lead guitar or playing riffs, it might be worth checking out those videos as well. But in this one, we're removing the single string limitation, which opens up a bit of opportunity for more material and means you have to be a little bit coordinated on what string you're aiming for, so just gives you a little bit more to think about. All the techniques and terminology used in these lessons are covered in previous series of my beginner course, which you can find on YouTube, so feel free to watch those videos if you want to brush up on anything. I've also uploaded some drum tracks at different tempos to my Patreon page, which you can find in the link in the description. That just means that you can play these riffs along to drums at different speeds to make sure that you're playing in time. Now, the first riff we're going to take a look at is actually more of a famous bass line, but there's no reason that you can't enjoy playing it on guitar as well, and that is The Chain by Fleetwood Mac. So this riff comes in at just over the 3-minute mark if you want to jump to it in the original track for a reference or to play along. And we're going to start with just the open A string. Let that note sustain for a bit, and then we're going to play the open A string again, which is the start of a 3-note run, which obviously starts with the open A, and then we're going to use second finger on 2nd fret of the A string, which is the note B, and then the 3rd finger on the 3rd fret, which is the note C. So if we put that all together with the sustained open string at the start, that would be this. So that little 3-note run, the notes all smoothly flow into one another. Following this, we're going to go back to the 2nd fret with the 2nd finger, then the open string. Now we change strings, so 3rd finger's going to come over and play the 3rd fret on the bottom string, which is the note G. So that little section. And then if we add that on to what we've already done. And then to finish it off, we're going to go open A, 2nd fret A, and then move over to the open low E string. So that ending. And then if we add that on, we get the whole thing. Let it ring out and then start again from the open A. So that's the basic version of the riff that the bass plays on its own when it starts at just over that 3-minute mark. From there onwards, he starts adding a few extra notes, and you can do this as well when you're playing along, especially when the vocals come back in and the lead guitar doing the solo and things like that, because they suddenly take the focus of the song rather than this riff, so you can kind of mess about with a few different variations in the background. So the first thing that I would try and do is this little climb back up to the A string at the end, which sounds like this. And what I'm doing there is I am hitting the open low E string, 3rd finger playing the note G, the 3rd fret on the low E, and then I'm starting the riff from the A string. So if I just give you an example of this in the context of the full riff, we'd have. So you've got to time it perfectly so you can preempt that open A string landing still on beat 1 of the bar. The next thing I'd try and add in as you're trying to kind of big up the riff the more times you play it is just some extra notes on the open A and open low E strings. So if I play it without any extra notes at all, we'd have. If I add some in now. Okay, so it's just making the riff a little bit busier, just playing them open strings to fill in those gaps a little bit. It doesn't have to be any sort of specific pattern. You can just hit all the notes in the bar, just going down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, you know, on that low E string, having... Or you can do more of kind of like a strummy style rhythm, this kind of thing. I'm going to show a close-up of the right hand in a second, so just to give you some ideas for picking direction, but that would be a way that you can sort of develop the riff as you repeat it through the song. Taking a look at the picking now, and just while you get the left hand sorted, it might be worth starting with all down picks. But it's not the most efficient way of doing it, so once that left hand is sorted, I would definitely try and throw in some alternate picking. The first one I would focus on after you've played that sustained open A string, the next 3-note run, I would try and play that alternate picked, either down, up, down, or up, down, up. Either way is fine, whatever feels comfortable, just try and get some alternate picking in. And then following on from that, try and just keep that alternate picking going. So try and get away from the all down picks and just keep the flow going. It doesn't have to be exactly the same way that I'm doing it, although I will take you through specifically what I'm doing if you want an exact example to copy. You can do it differently every time you play it, but so long as you're getting away from just all the down picks, that'll be fine. But if you want an exact reference, what I'm doing is down, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, down. And then if I do the little run at the end, with the open string, the 3rd fret G to the A, I will go down, up, down. So alternate picking that bit as well. Like most things on guitar, you want to start this off nice and slow and controlled, make sure it's precise and sounding exactly the way you want it, and then start speeding it up. It's actually quite a fast riff, this one, when I figured out the tempo for the drums. It's up in that 150, 160 BPM range, so yeah, pretty fast riff. As is the next riff we're going to take a look at, which is Breaking the Law by Judas Priest. So this riff very much focuses on similar notes as the chain. So if you've got the chain down by this point, this one shouldn't feel too uncomfortable. We're starting again with the open A string. And we're doing that movement once more where we're playing the 2nd fret with the 2nd finger, the note B. Then the 3rd fret with the 3rd finger, the note C. That's the first little 3-note run. We're then going to play that same run 2 more times, but the rhythm is slightly different. The first 2 notes, so the open string and the 2nd fret, are a little bit closer together. So rather than all equidistant like that, it's going to sound like... So if I play them 2 back to back, hopefully you can hear that little difference in the second one where that 2nd fret comes in slightly quicker. And it's the same on the 3rd repeat of those, that 3-note run as well. So if I put those 3 together, we've got... And that's pretty much the rhythm for the entire riff, so it's mainly made up of these little 3-note groupings. The next 3-note grouping we're going to play is going to start with the 1st finger on the 1st fret of the low E string, which is the note F, followed by the 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the low E, which is the note G, then the open A string. So once again, we're starting with the rhythm all equidistant. Then we're going to speed up the first 2 notes, so the F and G. So I put those 2 phrases together. Okay, I'm going to quickly play through the whole riff that we've learnt so far. And then we've got just one kind of ending phrase that basically turns around to start again, which is starting once more with the 1st finger on the note F, the 1st fret of the low E string. But this time we're jumping up to the 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the A string, which was the note C. And we're ending with the 2nd finger on the note B, which is the 2nd fret of the A. And that little C-B run sets you up nicely for the A, which starts off the repeat of the riff as well. So that ending phrase, that's the F-C-B, which sets you up nicely to start again from the open A. So it should sound pretty seamless when you play the riffs in a loop like that back to back. You do want to make sure that the notes all flow nicely into each other and there's no gaps. I explained exactly how to do that in my musical punctuation video, so it might be worth checking that out if you're finding that you've got a few gaps in your playing. It's quite a fast-paced riff, this one, so you might want to download the drum tracks and start on a lower tempo and then gradually increase the speed as you get used to it. So for the picking in this one, you want to employ very similar concepts to that of the chain. So again, you might want to start out with all down picks just while you get the left hand sorted. But then once comfortable, again, you want to start throwing in some alternate picking. Now, the first 3-note run where the notes are all equidistant, this doesn't really require any alternate picking. You could do 3 down picks, or you could alternate pick it down, up, down. Not too important on that one, but the next one where you've got that little fast 2-note run at the start of the grouping, that one you want to alternate pick, whether it's down, up, or up, down. You want to try and get used to playing those faster movements with alternate picking, and then it's just using less energy and your playing will start to feel more efficient. So just to give you an example of what you might want to do here, you could start with the 3 down picks. So down, 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 then throw the alternate picking in, down, up, down, down, up, down. Or you might want to flip the last one. So you've got down, 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 up, down, up, down, up. So it doesn't have to be the same every single time. And then same when you move on to the second half of the riff. Remember, this time you're starting on the low E string. So you're going to have to get used to moving between the low E and the A string, but that's all good practice. So if I employ that idea on this half as well, we'd have down, 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 up, down, up, down, up, and then that sets you up quite nicely for the down pick on the A string for the start of the next repeat. So it doesn't have to be the same every time. I'm pretty sure that I mix the picking a little bit every time I play it. Just go with whatever feels comfortable, but try and get some alternate picking in, especially on those little groupings of fast notes that are close to each other. But there's some ideas for the picking for breaking the law, and now we're going to move on to the next riff, which is actually the Mission Impossible theme. Now, absolutely everyone knows this one. You don't have to be limited to just playing songs when you're learning guitar. You can absolutely play soundtracks and things as well if you find them catchy. So for this one, very much using a similar set of notes, once again, all in that lower range on the neck, on the bottom couple of strings. We're going to start with the 3rd finger, playing the note G, which is the 3rd fret of the low E string, and we're going to start with 2 staccato notes. Following this, we're going to use the 1st finger to play the 1st fret on the A string, which is a B flat, and then the 3rd finger to play the 3rd fret on the A string, which is the note C. Those 2 notes aren't staccato, they're both sustained, so you can hear the difference in the rhythm between those notes. So 2 short notes and 2 long notes. We then have to move from the 3rd fret of the A string back down to the 3rd fret of the E string, and I think it's best to do this with a roll rather than a jump. So if I try and do a jump, I'm going to be playing the 3rd fret of the A with my fingertip, and then I'm going to jump the fingertip to the 3rd fret of the low E, and it means there's always going to be a gap there. You can hear that gap in between. If I do a roll instead, I'm going to play the A string with more of the fleshy part of my finger, like the pad underneath my finger, rather than the fingertip, and that means that I can roll onto the fingertip on the bottom string. And then I don't have any gap at all, I can just move smoothly from one note to the next. So that's how I would get back to the G note to play the next two staccato notes. So if we put that together, and then to finish the riff off, we're going to use first finger to play the first fret of the low E string, which remember was the note F, then the second finger to play the second fret, which is an F sharp, and then we start the whole riff again from the third finger playing the third fret. So that ending, and if we put the whole thing together, we get this. Like Breaking the Law, this one should flow seamlessly as you repeat it in a loop, so try and play it without any gaps. Now you might notice that I used a little loop in the demonstration, so what I did there was recorded this version that I've just taught you on the bottom couple of strings as the lower octave, and then I simply took that riff and moved it up an octave. So if you're not sure about how to move up an octave, it's you move along 2 frets and then up 2 strings. So previously we were starting on the 3rd fret of the low E string. If we move up 2 frets, we're up to the 5th fret, and then if we move up 2 strings, we're up to the D string. And if I take this riff and move the whole thing in that direction, 1 octave higher, I can play the same riff in the next octave, and all I did in the demo was loop those 2 parts over the top of each other, so you're hearing the same riff in both octaves. That can be quite a good exercise because it just gives you a thicker sound and gets you used to playing the timing. The reason why I didn't do this one along to a drum track is because it's actually counted in 5s. If I do the proper musical counting for this one, we'd have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 5, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 5, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 5, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 5. So if I played it along to a normal drum beat in 4/4, it actually wouldn't fit. It would kind of keep swapping where the beat was, which doesn't feel too good to play along with. So it's not really going to work along to just a standard drum loop, this one, which is why the looper pedal is quite a good way to practice it. So if we take a look at the right hand for Mission Impossible, there's not really that much to discuss in this one compared to the others. It's a little bit more simple, but there's a couple of concepts to chat about. The first one being that you might want to try palm muting this riff, so rather than playing it normally, if I get the palm muting on, it just sounds a little bit more percussive and kind of cool. It sounds a bit more sort of sinister. And another thing that you could practice with this is gradually reducing the amount of palm muting on to sort of build up the emphasis of the riff. So we're going from this, and each time just mute it a little bit less. And you can hear that the sound of the riff kind of grow as you go through the repeats. That's a pretty cool thing to practice, pretty useful for throwing into songs as well to change the dynamics going between sections. In terms of pick and direction, most of it is going to be just down picks, so could do the whole thing just as down picks. The only place where I might throw in an up pick on this one is where you've got the 3-note run at the end with the 1st, 2nd and 3rd frets on the low E string. You might want to go down, up, down rather than down, down, down. Just a matter of preference really. If you're trying to throw more alternate picking into your playing, might be a good one just to get some practice of that. The main thing when it comes to that part of the riff is getting the synchronization right. So exactly as you pick, whether it's an up or a down pick, the finger has to go down as well. So you can hear all of them notes flow nicely into each other. You're not getting any of this, where you're getting like accidental little hammer-ons and things, or resting the pick on the string. That's a bit of a bad habit as well and just stops the smoothness. So it's exactly as the finger goes down, the pick happens as well. and then you can hear those notes flow smoothly into each other. And then if you play the octave up, you just want to take those ideas but move them to the D and G strings instead of the E and A strings, and you can basically play it exactly the same. Should feel very similar even with the palm muting. But there's some ideas for the picking of the Mission Impossible theme as well. So there's another bunch of riffs for you to start playing around with, this time involving different strings and some slightly higher tempos, so just upping the level ever so slightly. Remember, you can brush up on all the terminology and techniques in previous series of my beginner course, which you can find nice and organised on my YouTube channel page. Feel free also to subscribe if you want to follow along with the lessons, and I'd appreciate you giving the video a like if you found it helpful. Remember also that I've uploaded them drum tracks to Patreon, so feel free to check that out and download them if you want to practice playing along, making sure you're in time. And I'm going to do one more video in this style where I'm going to give you a few more riffs all in one go, and then following that we're going to look specifically in a bit more detail at certain songs and try and dive in and get the whole structure of the whole song sorted. So hopefully I'll see you in those lessons as well.